What up, guys? What up, Renee? What a wild day. I think today was actually one of the funnest days that we probably had in quite a few weeks, I want to say, for that matter. Wayne, I called it correctly. Yeah, I called it the anchor view up. I will say that. That anchor view up was exactly what I had in my eyes, pretty much watching for the upside. It was just a matter of when it was going to get there. But what a day today. The market got what it pretty much was anticipating to some degree in terms of worst case scenario. I mentioned yesterday that 75 basis points versus 100 basis points was on the table for the Feds. They delivered the 75 basis points, kind of gave the market what they wanted, and I think the market reaction was more so on the kind of the time frame of when they actually decided to increase the rate hike, right? Because of the fact that of everything surrounding the inflation just continuing and feeling like the Feds had inflation out of control, this was that necessary action that they needed. Had they done a 50 basis point rate hike yet again, now we would have heard everyone pretty much reacting, saying, you know what, that the Feds are pretty much behind the yield curve and that we basically are still behind inflation. But we basically ended up getting what the market wanted. We got the increase in the rate hike, and we see the result. The market particularly liked it. Now, here's pretty much the flip side to this. No, every time we have a Fed statement that comes out, we usually get that immediate reaction, which obviously we saw. We got the little tank off of that, and then what do we do? We had a face trip, likely off of what Powell ended up saying there. Now the other flip side of that is that let the market digest what everything was mentioned today, and now we see if this entire price action, this entire rally that we had today, is this going to end up being faded and then we go right back down tomorrow? Or do we see an actual continuation off of this going into tomorrow? All right. SID's solid green day made 60% on a single candle as soon as FOMC started. That is the beauty of FOMC right now. You could potentially end up buying top or the bottom and playing it both ways. But you have to be a sniper. When you see a quick 10%, you got to be in, you got to be out. If you end up trying to chase and say, you know what, I'm up 10%, I'm going to go for 25, the next thing you know, you end up getting wicked out. So that's pretty much the biggest part about playing FOMC and trying to scalp. But there are multiple opportunities to pretty much make money trading FOMC day. Tickers, Moderna and Roku Krishna. I'll definitely get to that. Wayne, did I check with Sig? Yes, I did. I sent him a DM. So he is gonna be getting that to you. I think he's just a little bit caught up or out of the moment right now. So he said that he's going to definitely be getting that updated. So I would just stay tuned for that. But he is gonna be responding and getting that up for you. All right. Just about a matter of time. I don't know if he's gonna do it exactly today, or if he's pretty much out as of right now. So I'll pretty much give him a follow up for you though, okay, right? But kind of just giving you a follow up on what my levels were in terms of SPY yesterday, as we were just pretty much looking at a downfall, possibly even continuation to the downside. We had a beautiful reversal off of this 372 half. And then just looking at the levels that I wanted to see us reclaim, we got back over 377. The major levels that I was particularly watching for upside was 381 half. We had the 384 spot, and then ultimately was that anchored VWAP that I said that I would expect to test that anchored VWAP from the COVID lows as a resistance. So now we ended up getting just close enough to that resistance spot. We got up to 384. We couldn't necessarily push that extra, I want to say close enough to a dollar on SPY. But that's where I was expecting us to pretty much run into resistance. So could we potentially end up seeing a little bit of a gap up going right into this anchor VWAP tomorrow? It's entirely possible. My only concern right now is that we end up fading this move as the market digests everything that was said today, the rate hike that was mentioned today. I think we do end up going right back down to the downside as the market is basically going to interpret this in the fact that this has not yet been priced in yet enough. All right, that's pretty much what I end up getting out of this entirely. So I do not fully expect us to pretty much get a strong move beyond this anchored VWAP that I have on SPY above 384.94. So that's what I would say to be cautious about. If we end up pushing above 387, then I'll feel a lot more comfortable in terms of getting a bigger move out of this new reversal that we have. But if we don't end up breaking above 387, I think that's pretty much a little bit of a wick to the upside, getting a little bit of action above that anchor VWAP. But I would expect to close the day under it tomorrow and then we likely end up rejecting and coming right back down. All right. That's just kind of the sentiment of what I'm kind of expecting today. Today felt like a really much like a one of those days where we've had blow off the top type of action. We literally ripped from the get go and we didn't stop pretty much at all. So what a phenomenal day. I think a lot of names really showed a lot of strength. You could point to Microsoft kind of carrying the day, but Boeing also had a phenomenal day. I think that's one that really went under the radar. I know that a lot of traders don't really look at Boeing anymore any longer just because of the fact that it's just been a sinking ship. But that had a phenomenal day, up almost about $12 on the day. That was a crazy move, kind of leading the day as well with Microsoft and Tesla alongside. So that's kind of the things that just stood out to me in that sense. And then kind of what I expect going into tomorrow, just getting as high as 387, if that be, and expecting to reject and come right back under that anchored VWAP of 384.94. All right. And that's kind of what I would expect. I'll get into some ticker requests, not too much on the watch list right now. As we see, everything looks a little bit exhausted right now. I would kind of want to wait, see how tomorrow plays out. But Krishna, as you said, pretty much checking in on Moderna and Roku. I'll take a look at that for you right now as we take a look. I know that Moderna actually had news. They've actually had the vaccine looking like they have approvals for uh, the vaccine in children. So I did see that. Uh, no, kind of one of my pet peeves is usually saying that I don't typically like to look at names that have a defined downtrend. This is particularly one of those names that have a defined downtrend for that matter. But if I were to actually tell you in terms of where your downtrend resistance is, kind of gives you a better idea of what you're looking at. You're pretty much still in a defined downtrend resistance unless you're able to break out of this 142 spot. 142 would be that ultimate spot in which you would end up particularly breaking this downtrend. Otherwise, if I'm looking for a level of resistance in which you're going to particularly look for your rejection and going right back down, I would expect you to basically reject here at this 138 half, and that'll be where you go back down. All right. So as long as you're pretty much able to hold the 127 here, if you are able to hold 127 tomorrow, I think you can play this up to 138 half. But that would be the spot where I would be cautious about this, Krishna, because as you see, that's actually was your prior low that you put in from January 24th. You've put in that low yet again, retested that low February 14th. You had a little bit of a resistance to support before you broke out of that very convincingly in a downtrend resistance from March 11th. And then that's the level that you've been tethering resistance to support in this entire defined little downtrend that you've had for the past 3 to 4 months here. So as long as you hold 127 tomorrow, I think you could play this up to 138 half, but you don't break out of a downtrend resistance until you break over 142. All right. And that would be the levels that I would particularly watch in terms of this. So this could easily have maybe another 10-point day tomorrow. So that would be how I particularly look at this, making sure that it ends up holding 127. All right. So that's Moderna. The other one you mentioned was looking at Roku. Let's take a look at Roku. Wow, Roku actually had a pretty nice day today, up eight, almost $9 on the day. All right, let's take a look and see what's our level that we're particularly looking at. Very keen on this one. I think this is more so the level that I will be watching as you literally hit right into that resistance right there. You see that you pretty much anchored off of a low of April 27th. You had some resistance before you ultimately popped and got a strong reversal from May 25th. And you hit that resistance right here, right into today. So if you can end up popping over this resistance, you get your price action over $86 here. Over 86 would be where I say you try to play the upside. Over 86 there, then that you could end up taking this right back up towards 892. And that'll be how I would end up particularly playing this. In terms of defined downtrend resistance, if I try to pull that up for you, your defined downtrend resistance that you're watching here to break out of that will be right around this 99 to $100 mark is what you're looking at to break out of downtrend resistance. All right. And that's how I would go about looking at this. But 96 would be particularly your breakout point that you're watching to play the upside. All right. Trader ticker request Tesla. I know Tesla was actually the highlight of the morning. I think Avery kind of gave literally the play by play on Tesla today. That was just quite the move that he ended up catching out of that one. And then if I'm also mistaken, I think we also had the cloud alert that went off, and I think he also announced that as well. But I do see a little bit of a downtrend resistance pretty much sitting on Tesla here. You're likely going to smack right into that downtrend resistance here tomorrow, yet again. sitting right around the 706 spot is what I would say. 706 should end up acting as your resistance for you to pretty much break down. And breakdown level that I'm watching here is back under 682. So 682 would be your breakdown spot in which you could potentially look to see new lows that would break down below the level if you have a 635 from June 14th. But 682 is your breakdown spot. Otherwise, you're looking for calls over 706 on the break of the downtrend resistance. And then you could pretty much play this up towards 749 would be what I would particularly be looking at. All right. So 706 is your upside breakout. Your breakdown is 682 is what you're looking at for the downside. All right. And that's pretty much your two key levels that you really wanted to pay attention to. 682 and 706. All right. I don't know if anyone else has anything in particular, but kind of just keeping it, of course, simple. One that I know that was pretty, I think Jay was the one that I was actually watching Shop. I know that we had a Nimbus on Shop here today. Watching this one, we had that nice little wedge breakdown. As you see, I had the nice little trendline resistance that we have. Watching to see if we get pretty much continuation off of today's high. Over 332 here, I'm watching this one up towards 344 for continuation on today's price action. This is another one. This will basically be retesting your your support as resistance off of that breakdown from the wedge. So I'm gonna watch that one. 344 would be my target, and watching the break over 332 would be my breakout point. All right. So that's one that I kind of do had on the radar right now as well. I can also throw in Boeing as well. You see the little broadening wedge action that we have going on. And what's actually key about this one is looking at the resistance. You had the beautiful breakout today off of that nice reversal. Watching into the resistance here, my target here would be 143, and we would want to see continuation over today's high. Over that 135 half is what you're watching for a continuation towards 143. So this is another one that I think could have possibly a monster day if the market holds relatively at least flat to red. I still think that Boeing could actually be one of those names that potentially still has a bigger breakout in the making in continuation tomorrow. All right, so that's another one. Other than that, not too much standing out to me in terms of a lot of these leaders in the names. Microsoft, Apple, that's pretty much a little bit more so of a toss up. I know that Apple went right into resistance today. If I kind of just show you how Apple looks today, you pretty much went right into your resistance, pretty much anchors off of your high you had from back from April 29th. April 29th, you had a high of 137. We smacked right into that 137 level resistance today, and we basically rejected as we pretty much see a little bit of a doji action just sitting right across a lot of names, including SPY. So this is one, unless we end up breaking over 137 half, I would stay short. I would remain short to neutral on Apple right now. I don't think there's much upside. Otherwise, if you end up getting a break over 138, I think you could play this up towards the gap fill test here at 140.76, and that'll be how I would particularly look to trade this. All right. So over 138, then you could potentially look to play this towards 140.76, roughly almost about a near $3 move that you're looking at for the upside. All right. Wayne, do I have any feelings on BTC since market is following it? I'm gonna say I am leaning still bearish on crypto right now. I don't think that there's necessarily anything that says that otherwise for me right now. I am still bearish on crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all those names. I am still bearish on them. I don't think that there's gonna be much upside for them right now. Kind of like how we had a little bit of a relief in the market today. That could be said about the same thing about crypto right now. But I think that this is still short-lived, is what my sentiment is that I'm echoing. I think it's still short-lived for a lot of these leaders in this market, as well as for the crypto market. So that's what I would particularly say. I think you're hitting into a pretty tough resistance where it's not worth trying to go long necessarily, especially on the leaders of this market of saying Apple to Microsoft, and opposed to pretty much trying to go long on crypto as well. All right. Angel Angle, I'll take a look at AMC. Thoughts on housing market after 75 basis points? I think that market, I don't think this may necessarily try to be the trigger for the housing market to crash. I think we're still a little bit more of a ways to go, but this definitely aids in pretty much trying to put a top or a ceiling on that housing market right now. I think we're going to start to see it just slowly start to tumble right now as those rate hikes continue, we have another one, I believe, that's coming up in July that they're going to be talking about. They're going to see whether there's another 50 basis or 75 basis point rate hike. But as these rate hikes continue to progress, I think this is going to be kind of unfolding that peak that we've seen in the housing market, and we will see that reversal start to take place to the downside. And at what point it starts to accelerate, that's going to be the key factor right now. So, do I think it's going to be because of this rate hike in particular? I don't necessarily think so. I think you're maybe about another, say, 2 to 3 rate hikes away, in which you're really going to see that start to really crash. And I know that's kind of the trigger. Everyone's saying, that's the next thing to go right now is the housing market. That necessarily does feel like it is the next kind of thing, just holding us up by one piece of wood right now. So I would keep an eye on that. But I think that we may need another rate hike or two to really see that kind of give us a little bit more of an acceleration to the downside. All right. As you mentioned, AMC. I heard someone talking about GME today. I think it was up. Actually, like I want to glance at it real quick. It was up about $3. Not much. AMC, the memes just don't die. That is quite the thing right now. The memes just are not giving up right now. You do have a nice little wedge action, I will say, on AMC right now going on. It's a nice little falling wedge action. So I do kind of say that the memes have a little bit more life in them. I think they have a little bit more of a leg up. Now, in terms of where I'm seeing in terms of breakout point on AMC here, I wouldn't necessarily try to go long here unless you see this break over 13.5. You get a break over 13.5 on AMC, then we could potentially talk about getting up to our prior high from May 31st here, sitting at 1613. So, way I would probably say to playing this is one, you could do it a day trade, obviously, but I would just basically target on the breakout of 13.5. You're targeting $16 is what I would be looking at to play on AMC. Do I expect it to end up breaking that high from May 31st? I'll be honest with you, no, I don't, because I think we're going to end up getting a reversal in the broader market. And I don't know if the memes are going to be able to hold up necessarily once the market reverses right back to the downside. So your upside to me is a little bit limited here right now. But just looking at breakout point and immediate first PT basically, you're looking for the breakout over 13.5. You play this to $16. And whether you end up playing a weekly or you play next week expiration basically, that choice is up to you. But that's basically the level that I'll watch. Breakout over 13.5 and you play it up to $16. All right. And that's how I'll go about that. Other than that, kind of will at least say I will leave it at that then. Hopefully those few tickers that I looked at kind of helped you guys out there. Again, the key is going to be seeing, do we get a continuation out of this? Do we get to see a breakout above say 387 in which the market will say, we're potentially looking at a reversal? And I'm sure everyone on Twitter, on stock tweets, all these little places, FinTwits, they're going to be calling for that reversal once we start to break over 387. But that's going to likely end up being my top that I particularly look at in terms of where we can see this exhaustion and a reversal right back to the downside. All right, and that's exactly what I'm going to be watching for tomorrow to see if we get over that 387 mark or do we reject and get basically back under my anchored VWAP. For those of you that didn't hear me say that in the beginning. All right. But I'll leave it at that. Hopefully, you guys made some money today. I will pretty much hope that you guys ended up making money. You had a lot of opportunities, pretty much sniping, whether it be the top or the bottom. But if you ended up getting greedy, I hopefully you ended up learning a lesson. If you haven't, pretty much by the beginning of the year, as this market just continues to just tumble to the downside. All right. Appreciate you guys joining as always. Hopefully, I'll probably see if I'm in chat tomorrow. I know that I still haven't been on live. I've just been doing some backend stuff for TFC here, so I'll continue to do that. But if anything, you could tag me in chat or DM me. I'll end up getting back to you to get a response out to you. But other than that, again, appreciate you guys joining. Everyone.